Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chantex Multimedia's live streaming for Australian Indian Radio, and it's wonderful to have your company on this 6th day of March 2021, a very special day. And well, of course, it's a beautiful day out there, not too warm as well. It's a slight change there, so it is quite good to see. Hey, don't forget that today we have the inaugural, the first episode of Australian Medical Association, Indian Medical Association of Queensland, and their episode. And today on the interview is Dr Manoj Chabra. So it's quite a wonderful segment, and the first segment, first episode to go to air today. So, you know, that's coming up right after the news. Well, first off, we look at some of the events that we have been doing. Well, we have been holding, the Music Junction, and as you can see, we had over 47k views last night, of the Music Junction, and well done, Ajay Savi and of course Yusuf Ali Khan. So that's the far reach that we have. Well, right now the talks have been about international students and what's happening with international students, and should they be allowed to come back? What would the quarantine measures be? What's happening with that industry? Let's take a very quick look at that.
When you consider that Canada and UK, our two biggest competitors, have kept their borders open for a whole year and are flying international students in for face-to-face teaching in their universities, when you consider that New Zealand are now taking 1,000 returning international students, we've only taken just a bare handful into Darwin last year, and we're really destroying an industry that's taken decades to build, and as you say, really enriches Australia's future relationship in our region.
So the industry is very important. We know that. Equally, we've been hearing this morning about 40,000 Australians still stuck, still stranded, desperate to get back. So surely we need to continue prioritising Australians returning over international students.
Well, the list of Australians keeps increasing every week, and it's a real concern that we can't, as a nation, have some parallel arrivals happening. We would argue as an industry that it can be done. It was done in Darwin. You can take them straight to a separate quarantine facility, be it Howard Springs, be it the World Champ Airport facility that's proposed in Toowoomba, be it Avalon Airport here in Melbourne. And there's no reason why we can't have charter flights bringing these students in, walking them across the tarmac into separate quarantine facilities that are not going to be competing with the hotel quarantine for Australian returners.
So you want to run, and you put this proposal to the government, I understand, a separate and completely separate arrivals and quarantine process for international students.
Absolutely, and the industry is prepared to pay whatever it takes for additional Australian Defence Force and for police to ensure that it all happens properly with only one point of entry and one point of exit.
And that's the call there for getting the international students back onto our shores, as we know that the industry, as has been said, is taking a toll. And right now, let's take a look at news in brief before we go to the Indian Medical Association of Queensland's episode 1 of Aapki Shehath, meaning Your Health, which is pioneering or featuring, premiering today. Well, most Australians are planning to get COVID-19 vaccine, and survey reveals, but experts say there's no detected worrying trend of the data. Dr Caroline Fagan receives her first AstraZeneca vaccine shot in Australia. Caroline Fagan, a GP consultant ahead of Riverland's Malik Hurong Local Health Network, received the jab at Murray Bridge Hospital on Friday. And Brendan Murphy says locally produced AstraZeneca doses to be administered from March 22nd. And Federal Health Department Secretary Brendan Murphy said CSL facility in Melbourne was on a track to deliver the first batch of doses in the week starting March 22nd. Sex Discrimination Commissioner lead Parliament House inquiry into the culture. It comes as Linda Reynolds apologized for calling alleged rape victim Brittany Higgins a lying cow. Finance. Sharp falls on Wall Street overnight dragged our market lower as investors continue to fret about bond markets and the potential for inflation. Economist Sarah Hunter on Australia's economic outlook. BIS Oxford Economics Chief Economist Sarah Hunter says Rachel Popolazzoni economic growth is likely to continue but at a slower pace as the stimulus is withdrawn after its initial recovery from the depths of COVID recession. Cafe helps employees to big dreams. Once lived on the street and now a second chance working at a cafe has him following his dream. Western Australia government announces Royal Commission to examine a Commission's Bearwood Casino, and the Western Australia government has announced a Royal Commission will examine Crown's suitability to run its casino at Bearwood. The Parliament of Australia should set a standard for the nation, Simon Brangham says. Finance Minister Simon Brangham says that he's worked with opposition and crossbench to set an inquiry. It is a long overdue for Parliament House treatment of women to change. Ancestry Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins will lead an independent inquiry into the culture of Parliament House and resulting in the shock allegations of rape in the ministerial office. Tim Pallas says part of Vic Roads will be partnered with private sector in joint venture. Mr. Pallas says Victorian government will maintain ownership and control of Vic Roads while private sector will deal with the registration and licensing. Peter Bennett reveals how a TVT implant impacted her life. Peter Bennett, who underwent a TVT implant procedure in 2004, said the federal court decision was to win for her like others. Signed lawyers' response after Johnson & Johnson loses pelvic mass court case. Signed lawyers class action practice leader Rebecca Jenkowski says that it was one of the biggest women's health class actions in Australia's history. The rising tennis star pushing for more diversity in sport. It's believed up to 75% of those born overseas aren't regularly participating in physical activities. And now for world news. Italy blocks shipment of COVID-19 vaccines to Australia. Australia has become collateral damage in an escalating dispute between European officials and AstraZeneca over the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines. America's forgotten massacre, the Bath school disaster, was one of the most shocking examples of homegrown terrorism but has drifted out of public consciousness. John Barron looks back at the 1927 bombing that remains the deadliest school killing in America's history. And of course, as we have seen before, that Italy blocks the 250,000 AstraZeneca doses to Australia. The Italian government has stopped a shipment of 250,000 Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 doses travelling to Australia. And vaccine experts say Italy-EU decision to block AstraZeneca shipment is disappointing. Italy and European Union have blocked a shipment of Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus destined for Australia amid a stoss over contract commitments between pharmaceutical companies and the EU. New Zealand tsunami warning downgraded after third earthquake struck off North Island coast. New Zealand tsunami threat level has been downgraded after the passing of the largest waves, New Zealand's Emergency Management Agency says. Waves surged rolling in the Tokomaru Bay. Wave surges were hitting the coast of New Zealand as authorities have evacuated residents to higher grounds after three strong earthquakes hit Kermadec Islands. And New Zealand authorities urge residents not to return home after three earthquakes have triggered tsunami warnings. And authorities have evacuated residents from near the coast and low-lying areas onto higher grounds. And bedroom and other contents have been shaking after the earthquake in New Zealand. A strong 7.2 magnitude earthquake struck off the east of New Zealand's North Island, prompting a tsunami warning that was later withdrawn. So there you are, up to date on Australian Indian Radio and Chantex Multimedia Network. And that was the news in brief. And as we said, that today's main feature is the interview and the first episode of Indian Medical Association of Queensland and the Aapka Shehath, meaning your health, and episode number 1. And the wait is over. And here it is, the long-awaited episode that people have been talking about. So, I'd like to thank Indian Medical Association of Queensland for putting this together. And it will be a monthly feature. It will be on the first Saturday of every month on this Facebook Live channel. And the same segment, the audio version of that will be aired on Australian Indian Radio's air on Sunday, the first Sunday at 10 a.m. as well. So, the same timing on both the places once a month. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy this very informative session, the first episode of Aapka Shehath with the first interview is with Dr. Manoj Chabra, and this is brought to you by Indian Medical Association of Queensland.
Hello everyone. The Indian Medical Association of Queensland has been running a public health lecture series since March 2020. Our members, who are doctors of Indian origin, practice in this wonderful sunshine state of Queensland. They volunteer their valuable time and expertise in this endeavour. The advice given by any doctor is of general nature and meant for information and education only. Please note, this is no substitute for your own healthcare professional, and everyone is advised to consult with their own treating physician for ongoing health issues. I will now ask the Secretary General of the Indian Medical Association of Queensland, Dr. Cyril Fernandez, to introduce you to our guest speaker of the month.
Hello listeners. Liz has already told you about the public health message from the Indian Medical Association of Queensland, Australia. Today, viewers, we have the pleasure of talking to and listening to Dr. Manoj Chabra, who is a well-experienced general practitioner doctor working in Queensland, Australia. He is a fellow of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. Dr. Chabra will be talking to us on Aapki Shehath program, meaning Your Health, initiated by Indian Medical Association of Queensland, Australia. Dr. Chabra, initially I like to ask you, for the benefit of the viewers, to tell us about your background, your educational and professional achievements, and so on, please.
First of all, thanks Cyril for having me on this platform, Aapki Shehath, and thanks to all the viewers and listeners as well today. Yes, let me introduce myself. As Cyril said, Manoj Chabra. I'm a GP working in Brisbane. I came to Australia back in 2002 directly from India, and has been working as a general practitioner in Brisbane since then. I cleared my fellowship exams in 2007 and got my fellowship in 2007-2008. I did few years of after hours work as well, and then since then I've been working as a GP mainly in Daisy Hill Surgery now from last 7 to 8 years. I'm also one of the clinical medical directors for the After Hours Company National Home Doctor Service. So I have been on the board for last 5 to 7 years as well. Apart from that, I have done few qualifications as DAMI, which is Designated Aviation Medical Examiner, and I'm also a visiting medical officer to Belmont Private Hospital, which is a private psychiatric hospital. So I do inpatient GP stuff there at the hospital as well. So that's pretty much about me.
That's good to know, Dr. Chabra. Yeah, you have a wide experience in general practice. So it's good to know what you just told all of us about you. You see, Dr. Chabra, general practitioners are the gatekeepers of primary care and play a lead role in preventive medicine and health, chronic diseases, and also aged care. Can you please highlight on the salient aspects of healthcare in general practice in a wider perspective, please, Dr. Chabra?
Yeah, definitely, Cyril. As I think aged care is definitely a topic of interest nowadays, with a lot of talks and media news about the aged care in Australia. we would agree that in Australia we rely mainly on the nursing homes to cater to our older population, and according to the Royal Commission report from last year, they said that the aged care is definitely one of the underprivileged sectors in Australia. So I also agree on that, because I do visit a lot of aged care, and I do home visits in a lot of aged care and look after the elderly population. And as you would agree that the elderly population in aged care, they are definitely deficient in getting a quality health care. Because of the fact that they are old and because of their frailty, they cannot come to the medical centers. If they need a specialist opinion, they cannot go to the specialist rooms. So ideally they are relying on only GPs like us who visit aged care to provide them with quality health care, and which is always not the best, as because they have got complex needs, and we as a GP are sometimes not able to cater to their needs. And the only resource left is to send them to the nearest emergency department in the public hospital, which puts an extra burden on the hospital system. So in whole, it is a pity that something needs to be done for the aged care center, so that the doctors and the specialists can provide a better support and care to these elderly population. According to the statistics, 1 out of 7 Australians are above the age of 65. And it's going to increase in coming years. So the burden of aged care or older population in Australia is going to be big in next 10 years.
Yes, Dr. Chabra, you have highlighted very well on the aged care system and the future. Thank you for that. You see, Dr. Chabra, some general practitioners tend to have a special interest in certain areas, for example, men's health, women's health, mental health, diabetes, heart conditions, osteoporosis, anemia, and so on. Please, Dr. Chabra, give us some insights on your areas of special interest being a general practitioner.
Look, as a general practitioner, we cannot restrict ourselves to one specialty. We have to deal with any patient, any condition which comes and enters our doors, as you would agree, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
yeah. It's
yes,
like
exactly, isn't it? Exactly,
totally
that's right.
agree.
So we have to cater to everything. But yes, every GP has special interest, and I think I would, if I go back and look into my interest, I would say that I may have a special interest in geriatrics and mental health as well, because I have been working as a visiting medical officer in Belmont, which is a private psychiatric hospital, for over 7 to 8 years now, and I've been seeing patients getting admitted with all these mental illnesses. Mental health is big in Australia. Again, I would like to bring about some statistics about mental health. According to the Australian statistical data, they say half of all the Australians aged between 16 and 85, that is around 8 million people, will experience some sort of a mental health related issues in some part of their life. And the most common being anxiety, affective disorder, which is depression, and substance use disorder, mainly alcohol abuse. Again, suicidal rates are quite high in Australia. 9 Australians die every day by suicide, which is a big number. 75% of those are males, and around more than 65,000 Australians make a suicidal attempt each year. And suicidal is the leading cause of death for Australians between the age of 15 and 45. So mental health is a big thing in Australia, and I think as a GP we all have a responsibility to detect and treat mental health conditions early in our population.
Yeah, Dr. Chabra, you have highlighted on very significant issues of general practice. Mental health is a big thing. Prevention of suicide. Sane Australia is a good organization helping as well as the public with a lot of awareness programs. You highlighted on the geriatric swelling aged care population and what to do with GPs being in the pivot in the arena, and then sending those required to specialists. So thank you so much for what you have highlighted and given us to the viewers. Liz has got something more to ask. Please, Liz.
Dr. Chabra, what are your hobbies and other interests outside of being a GP?
Yes, would have to love some more time on my shoulders to have some hobbies. Yes, I'm trying to develop a hobby in golf, so I like playing golf on the weekends.
Lovely.
Spend some time with the family and go out. So just developing a new hobby, which is mainly golf.
Lovely. And Dr. Chabra, finally, can you please tell our listeners what it is your message is to maintain a healthy lifestyle?
Look, again, good health isn't just about healthy eating and exercise. It's also about having a positive attitude and a positive self-image and a good lifestyle. So I would suggest to the listeners that I think just try to have a positive attitude towards life and eat healthy and do exercise every day.
It's great advice.
Thank you.
Dr. Chabra, on behalf of the Indian Medical Association of Queensland, I would like to thank you for your time
You're
today
welcome.
and for your wonderful presentation.
No worries.
And ladies and gentlemen, that has been a special presentation of Indian Medical Association of Queensland, and I'd like to thank them for their effort. And it is wonderful to see, such topics being discussed and brought out into the public. And of course, has been mentioned that what's discussed is general advice only, and for your own health, you'll need to consult your GPs and your doctors. But the topics that are discussed are of community interest, and I think it is wonderful that they have brought such a platform right here via the live stream. And don't forget that the audio of this version will be played on Australian Indian Radio on Sunday at 10 a.m. With that, I'd like to, especially thank my dear friend Cyril Fernandez for the efforts. Really appreciate that. Well, right now, moving on, let's get a message from one of our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world, and don't forget that every Wednesday we bring to you the real estate update with Usha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty right here, right on this channel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now we'll join with our Prime Minister as the big announcements are being made after the National Cabinet meeting.
Afternoon, everyone. Well, it's another V-Day for Australia, another vaccination day. The AstraZeneca vaccine has been administered in South Australia and will be rolling out amongst other states over the course of the next few days. The vaccination program is critical, absolutely critical, to the way that Australia continues to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic and indeed the COVID-19 recession. As I said yesterday, Australia is leading the world out of the COVID-19 pandemic and out of the COVID-19 recession. We saw that with the national accounts figures that were released earlier this week, which puts Australia in the top group of nations, in fact, of advanced economies right at the top in terms of how we're coming out of the COVID-19 recession. But equally, as we've known for many months, Australia has also, from a health perspective, been very successful in suppressing the virus here in Australia, particularly when compared to other countries around the world. Australia is in a very unique position. It's a position all Australians have worked hard to achieve, to ensure that we are in the situation we are in today. National Cabinet has played a key role in all of these achievements, in all of these successes. And National Cabinet met again today, and what was once again a very constructive meeting. At all times in the National Cabinet, what we've sought to do is to chart the way forward. Of course, we come up against obstacles, we come up against issues that we have to deal with. There's been plenty of surprises too along the way, which have required responses at the time. But at all times what we seek to try and do is ensure we're doing this on as nationally consistent basis as possible, not always achieved, but we also understand the principles that should drive how we open up. Now the good news is that we are opening up. We are far more open than we were. We want to stay open though, that's the key to the confidence in the economic recovery that we're seeing coming out of the COVID-19 recession. And so today it was agreed on the work that we commenced a month ago that the Directors General of all the Premier's Department and the Secretary of the Department of Prime Minister's Cabinet will continue to do the work to inform National Cabinet on how the risks are changing and the data that is needed to be provided to Premiers and myself and Chief Ministers to ensure that the decisions we're making about whatever future further opening up and removing of restrictions is done in a consistent way that looks not just at the health issues that are relevant, but of course the impacts that are had more widespread on the economy. Now the reason there is more opportunity to do that now, particularly when it comes to the economy, is because of the improvements we're seeing with the rollout of the vaccine, the improvements we're seeing in terms of the health outcomes right across the country. That gives us further opportunity to give greater certainty and greater confidence to business and Australians all around the country so they can return to as much of the normal life as they possibly can. We also received an update on the vaccination rollout today, and I'm going to ask Professor Murphy, who's joining us today, to give us his update on those programs. You would have already heard today from Minister Hunt about the issues that were raised earlier today. That program is on track. It's a significant program of a scale that we have not seen in this country before, and everybody is working together to ensure that we can deliver those vaccines all around the country. Forward distribution plans for the vaccines, the progress that we're making with aged care, the enabling regulation, which is important to support pharmacists to be able to play their role in the vaccination program, all addressed today. Of course, the Chief Medical Officer has always updated us on the health situation around the country and some of the current issues. On Pacific workers, we've been able to put in place a pre-travel quarantine pilot. Now, only South Australia at this point has indicated they're keen to join in with that program, but other states are considering it. This is the situation where out of countries such as Vanuatu and Fiji, where they do actually run quarantine programs, that there will be an opportunity to quarantine post-travel to Australia as part of the seasonal worker program. That is something that's been particularly worked through with the Chief Medical Officer, and I want to thank him and also DFAT for the work they've done working with those jurisdictions. Today I can also announce that the Commonwealth is entering into an agreement with the Northern Territory Government to further expand our Howard Springs National Resilience Quarantine Facility to 2,000, up from 850. And that will be done over the next few months, and that is an important addition to the capacity of those quarantine facilities to receive those return chartered flights that Australia has been putting in place now for many, many months, and that's where people will quarantine. The other arrival caps remain as we had them before. I want to thank New South Wales in particular for taking more than 3,000 a week. Both Western Australia and Queensland are also now back over 1,000 per week, and South Australia at 530. And I'm looking forward soon to a decision from the Victorian Government once they're in a position to advise us of when they'll be also in a position to take flights again. So all in all, a rather routine meeting of the National Cabinet today, considering the information before us, setting the charting the way forward in terms of how we can keep Australia open and seek to do that on a far more consistent and a predictable basis, because that lies at the heart of our economic recovery as well. So with that, I'll hand you over to the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Kelly, and then I'll hand you over to Professor Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. So a couple of slides up on the screen, maybe go through to the next slide. So we have a visual representation of where we're at in terms of the epidemic here in Australia. And so we're used to hearing the total numbers since the beginning of the pandemic when we had our first cases at the end of January last year. So we're up over 29,000 cases, 909 Australians have lost their lives. But I think it's time now, as we go into 2021, and as the PM has mentioned, looking at the way we chart our way out of this pandemic, both from the health and the economic perspective, that we should start thinking about what's happened this year rather than the whole of the pandemic. So since the 1st of January, there's been 600 cases of COVID-19 in Australia, and only 104 of those have been locally acquired. So the vast majority of overseas cases, and in fact in the last week, of the 60 cases we've had, they have all been overseas acquired cases, similar to the very start of the pandemic. We've had less, throughout the whole of this year to date, we've had less than 20 people in hospital, less than one or less people in ICU, and 0 deaths. Contrast that with the rest of the world. Let's go to the next slide, thanks. Where there is increasing cases still in many parts of the world. There are some very encouraging signs in some in Europe and North America where cases have started to decrease, hospitalisations have started to decrease, and deaths have started to decrease. But even so, year to date, so from 1st of January to today, over 33 million cases in the world, and over
33 million cases in the world, and of course we'll have to release that report there. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company on this show, and I hope that you have enjoyed the first episode of Indian Medical Association of Queensland in the episode called Aapki Sehat, meaning your health, interview with Manoj Chabra today. And I think that was a very, very informative session, and we're looking forward to the continued support and getting on to the next episode for the next month. So remember that it will be aired every month. So right now it's time to say goodbye from this segment. It's been wonderful having your company. It's always so good to see you, and enjoy the rest of the weekend as people are now out and about as well. But please do remember to exercise care wherever you are. Please take into account all the health habits that we have acquired during this pandemic. That's if one thing good to come out of the whole pandemic is people's behavior and outlook towards personal hygiene and other things as well. So that is some traits that we need to follow through with that as well, so that this kind of thing never ever happens again. As the vaccination is being rolled out, when your turn comes, please do get vaccinated. Until Monday, is goodbye from me. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Most importantly, stay safe.